All right. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. James Donaldson here, Standing Above the Crowd podcast, coming to you live from Seattle, Washington. And I want to make sure that we introduce our guest in just a moment. But today's a special show for me and for our guest as well. My dear and beloved friend and coach and mentor, George Raveling, passed away on September 1st of this year, just last month. And he was a terrific mentor to me throughout those years. I met him first in 1975. He was my coach over at Washington State University. And besides my own biological dad, I give George the most credit of anybody, really keeping me on track and molding me to become the upstanding, hopefully fine young man that I became and still am to this day. So many lessons I've taken from George. We've got 4 other guests I'd like to bring on the show as well. All of them have been coaches throughout the year, and they coached with George way back in the day. Saw his tremendous growth as a coach and as a person. And remember, this is 50 years ago. So all of us were young men back then. And we all give George a lot of credit for helping shaping us and getting us on our journey. Who's up first there, Daniel? Who you got? You can plug them all in at the same time. What do we got going on here? All right, there they are. Okay, everyone's in. Okay, we got 3 of them anyway. And I want to start first with the guy I know the best, Mark Edwards, Coach Mark Edwards, who was the assistant coach at WSU back in the day. And Mark was there when I got to school. He was my assistant coach with George Raveling and another assistant at the time. And Mark and I have stayed in touch throughout those years, and he's been very instrumental in my life as well. Mark, what we want to do today is just kind of give a celebration of life about George Raveling and also share some of the life lessons that maybe you've picked up from him and you've been able to implement throughout. And we got about 25 minutes throughout the show. So we'll kind of split it up in 5-minute segments, or you can jump back and forth, whatever you want to do. Mark Edwards, take it away. What's your thoughts and remembrances of George Raveling, excuse me. For some reason I can't hear you, Mark.
I think he's muted.
Are you muted?
Geez, that Washington U education, you'd think he'd be able to do this.
That's right. It looks like you're muted. How's that? I hear it. Not quite. Keep on working on that. Coach Edwards. Let's go to Jack Furdy. Jackie up there in the corner there. Hey, man, give me some of your remembrances of George and of me. I mean, I vaguely remember you 50 years ago, but yes, you've got a lot of great stories from back then. Go ahead and start off, Jack.
You don't remember me, but I know John Heft is down there, and John told me one time, he said, "I'm pulling rank on you. I've gone up to Spokane to pick up these 7-footers we're bringing in. I just can't do another one. I want to spend the night with my wife. Go up and get this guy. He's 6'11". And I went up to Spokane Airport, and this little commuter plane comes in, and you get off. And I said, gee, that guy's bigger than 6'11". And how many 7-footers are going to be on this plane? It must be him. And I walked over. I said, you James? He said, yeah, I'm Jack Furdy, one of Coach Raveling's assistants. I said, James, I heard you were 6'11". You're a little big. He said, no. Actually, I'm 7'2". Said, haven't you weigh about 215? You said, no, Coach, more like 285. Well, you were 70 pounds. And we drove down. We made that drive down from Spokane to Pullman under the cover of darkness.
Yeah.
There was no life between Spokane and Pullman.
Not then.
And then you got in, and boy, you made an impact right away. Rick Sloan helped you run better.
That's right. My old track coach. The track coach.
And George got you a job. I know I told you this story. George got you a job at Palouse Produce.
That's right.
And he gets a call about 2 weeks after you're there. And he says, oh, no, the guy's, secretary said, guy's calling from Palouse. No, James screwed up, another one of these recruits that comes in wanting something, And the guy says to him, George, you got any other guys like Jamie? He's the best worker that I have.
Oh,
George said right then, I knew that he was coachable.
Wow, that's great. That's
you had
so
a long
great.
way to go. I mean, you had a great career, but your high school career was nothing to talk about.
No, 1 year in high school. But hey, man, this is not about me. Let's talk about George. So some of your remembrances about George in a couple of minutes, and we'll switch off to the other guy.
But one thing that's funny, George, we'd go to lunch, and when you went to dinner with George, he always picked up the check.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mean, I worked for one guy for 7 years, and in 7 years, he bought me an ice cream cone. George probably thousands of dinners because I worked for him at WSU as a grad assistant and then as assistant coach at USC many years later. So I saw his growth, and he saw mine. But we'd go to lunch, and he'd always ask, first thing, do you have soup? And if the waiter could have said, we have cream of dirt. Oh, give me your bowl. And I never heard him turn down. And to this day, I always have soup when I go.
Is that right? Wonderful.
And I give to George.
Yeah, wonderful. And we got a notice in the announcements here. Brad Jackson, if you want to get on the show, turn your video on. Your video's not on, so we can't see you. Mark Edwards, is your microphone working now? Still not working. Oh my, I'm so sorry. I don't know what we can do. What about John? John Heff, you're over there. What do you got to say?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Hey, Mark, how are you? Can you hear us, Mark? Can you hear us? Mark and my son lives 5 minutes from Mark in St. Louis, and I'm going there next week to see my son. They just had a baby. So Mark and I are having breakfast together on next Friday.
Oh, wonderful.
But Mark used to come to Rochester when they played up there, and my son, when he was 7 years old, was his ball boy a couple of years when we'd come to Rochester. So Mark and I have stayed in touch, even though I was out coaching. But to talk about, and hopefully Brad Jackson's on. Hi, Brad. I was the first assistant hired by George.
Okay.
And George and I met at the University of Maryland's basketball camp when Lefty Driesell was the head coach. It was George Raveling and Jim Maloney and Jim Herrick were the assistants there.
Wow.
And I was there for a month, and George and I really hit it off. And he told me when I was leaving camp, he said, John, when I get my first head coaching job, I'm going to hire you. You're going to be the first assistant that I hire.
Is that right?
And so it was like 9 or 10 months later, and George calls me. I'm recruiting, I think, in Sharon, Pennsylvania, watching an All-Star game. And George calls me, leaves me a message, and I call him. He said, he need to come to Philadelphia. I'm going to accept a job, and I want to talk to you about it because I want you to go with me. So I flew to Philadelphia, and in the room was Rolly Massimino and John Thompson.
Wow. So
George offers me the job. Now, back in those days, he says Washington State. We had no idea where Washington State was. I mean, I was a Midwesterner. I was thinking I was going to Seattle, quite honestly. And George and I fly in together, and Sam Jankovic picks us up at the airport because he was assistant AD and drives us 75 miles to Pullman, Washington.
There we go. That's right.
Now I'm single, and we're driving down, and that night I'm up in the Union or whatever it was for the night, and I'm looking out over those wheat fields. I'm going, what did I agree to? But the things about George that were so remarkable was, first of all, he was the hardest working person that I ever knew. And he taught us how to work hard. We were always in the office at 7 a.m. He also taught us organization, how to communicate, write letters and that. And James, when you talked about father figures,
yes,
I had 3. My father was a great man.
Good.
I played for Bill Fitch for a year in college, and Bill Fitch taught me he was an unbelievable worker. He taught us all how to work hard and that. And he was a great communicator. And then George. So we get to Washington State, and try to recruit. And of course, we got there late, so there was nothing out there but crumbs that year. And so the first year was sort of difficult. But we did pick up Edgar Jeffries. And that was I found Edgar at an all-star game in Sharon, PA, and we convinced him to come out to Washington State.
Mm.
And then the next year we got Padakis. I found Padakis in Chicago. And the funny story about Padakis was he lived on the border of, he went to St. Lawrence High School, and it was Cicero, and Cicero bordered up to the black community. And they were always at odds. And so I go see Padakis play, and I called George and I said, this kid can really play. You know, the big schools really aren't sold on him because he's not a jumper or whatever. And George said to me, he said, John, he will never come and play for a black head coach because of the thing what's going on there. Now, Steve's father had died when he was really young. So he was raised by his mother. And I said, George, you need to get on a plane and fly in here right now because you can sell the mom and we can get Steve. So he flew in, and of course, Padakis' mom fell in love with George, you know, because George was that kind of person. And to think about him going all the way from Chicago to Pullman, Washington, and here's his mom living there in Chicago all by himself, type of deal. So, so that, you know, George, he was a great motivator, great communicator. And the other funny thing was, you know, again, being in the Pacific Northwest, George, who was the first black head coach in the Pacific Northwest, and I was sort of a young guy with long hair, and I kid George, I said, you know, just think they hired a black guy and a hippie to come out here and rebuild their program. And Mark Edwards was there at the time.
That's good.
He was a graduate assistant, and he was brought in by the guy who was the head coach that gotten fired the year before. And so that's how Mark ended up. Mark had been in the Army, I think, for 4 years. Raise your finger, Mark, if I'm correct in saying that. And so that's how Mark ended up at Washington State. And then Jack came also that year, I believe, right, Jack, when Mark was there?
I replaced Dick DiVenzio.
Okay.
So
I was there your second year.
Okay, so DiVenzio was there first, and then you came in and DiVenzio left. Okay, because that would have been my second year. And I told James this, and I'll let somebody else talk, was I went to Sacramento and saw James play. And I did tell you, he was 7'2", Jack. You're getting old and you're forgetting. But I saw James play. And if I remember James, only
I had a lot more hair, too. I had a lot more hair back then.
I still have hair, which is good.
How you did that? You and Mark both.
Yeah. So, well, we don't do this all the time with our hands. So that's the reason we have. Yeah. So, if I'm correct, James, only Sacramento State and Washington State offered you a scholarship. And I told George, I said, here's this guy, 7'2", 260, 270, built like a brick shit house.
Yeah.
And he has a long way to go, but he's the nicest person I ever met. And we might as well take a flyer on him. And I know that, and I brag about you, James, because of what you did. But George was good. And Jack, I think the last time I saw you, I was with Xerox and I was living in Tokyo, and I flew in and I saw George just after his wreck in Los Angeles. It was you and Charlie Parker picked me up at the airport.
That was 94. Yep.
Right. And Jack, you wouldn't know this, but Charlie Parker played for me at Findlay College.
Is that right? I did not know that.
So I was assistant at Findlay College. That's my first year. And James, I don't know if you know the name Charlie Parker, but he's been in the NBA as an assistant.
I know. I know he is. Yeah.
So Charlie went to Bowling Green his freshman year and couldn't make it, so he transferred to Findlay College, and he was really a great track guy. He was a high hurdler, and so Charlie played on the Findlay team. That was my first year there, and we won our first 18 games. There were like 22-2. And then I went back. I was assistant there, but so Charlie. I know that Charlie, so you had that connection, but I saw George, and you guys took me to his home right after that. But so anyway, that's a little history book on George, but I would tell you that if you talk about a man that worked hard and had great principles, it was George. And I think that people that surrounded him. And I'd see George time to tell. And when he went to Iowa, I was still living in Columbus at that time. And so we'd have lunch or dinner when he'd come in and play Ohio State University type of deal.
All right. Wow. Wonderful. Hey, my producer's on me to read this little note here. I got an announcement, put my little specs on. We have a live high school football at Rainier Avenue Radio tomorrow at 7 p.m. And this is Franklin at West Seattle. So check that out tomorrow at 7 o'clock. And a couple good teams, Franklin, West Seattle. And that'll be fantastic. Mark Edwards, are you back now? Is your mic working? You're not on the screen even. Where you at? And Brad was not able to get in, obviously. Jack, let's go back to you, Jack. I know you can fill some time without any problem. What do you got there?
Maybe not as long as John, but
okay.
I'll tell you what, George was a guy who was a continual learner.
Yes.
He read. I'd never seen anybody who read as much as George did. And one thing people, I guess, old timers know, and I know John remembers for sure, George would subscribe to 50 papers around the country.
Yes.
And they hated when he would bring those papers on the plane.
I think our producer has a photo of that. Daniel, we got a photo of that, George reading all
these
these
papers?
papers?
Attendants were so upset because he'd bring all the papers and he'd cut out the clippings, the sports pages, and then he'd give them to us. I mean, it would say something like, John Smith had 25 points for Central High School, and it was the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And that was our job as grad assistants, Mark and I. We'd be going through these things because John and Steve Cottrell, the other assistants, had scrolls.
Yes,
something like 53 pages, one page for each state. I mean, one book for each, one scroll for each state.
Alphabetically.
26 pages for each letter of the alphabet. And it was, 50 states and DC and Canada, I think, and Mexico and Europe. I mean, and those guys, George would quiz them.
Yeah.
He would bring maybe John in. Okay, John is just from Missouri. What can you tell him? Well, John.
And that's a good job on his voice, Jack. Hey, John, what's the story on this kid in Missouri?
Well, I worked for George long enough that I heard his voice so many times. He would do the stuttering, and he used to tell me he did it on purpose. Said it made him sound more human. But I mean, I'd look at Mark and I'd say, John Smith, 22 points from Central High School in St. Louis. How are we going to find Central High School in St. Louis? There might be 3 of them. And then with John Smith and 20, I mean, I played in high school. There were a lot of guys scored 22 points, couldn't play in the Pac-8 back then.
That's right. This is well before the internet. You couldn't even Google it. So you did.
But I'll tell you what he did. And John, you might remember, George used to tell us the easiest thing to do in life is make money. And he was such an out-of-the-box thinker that he realized, like you said, there was no internet.
No.
So he said, you know what? I get these newspapers from all over the country. People in the West don't hear about this stuff until days later.
That's right.
George started writing a column.
Yeah.
And it was syndicated in about 22 papers all over the Northwest. Spokesman Review, Seattle PI, the Boise's paper. And he would cut out the articles. Like Al McGuire might have said something crazy after Marquette won. And George would have little blurbs in there. Well, one thing he did was there was a guy named, John, you can help me, Max, one of his friends, and he ran
Shapiro.
Max Shapiro. Right.
Oh.
And Max went to George and he said, I run these camps. I really want to get Wooden, but John and Wooden was still coaching.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mark, are you there? Hey,
he's
on.
Oh, God. Everything that's been said is wrong.
Max Shapiro said to George, I want to get Wooden, and he won't do it. And George said, here's the way you get. And John's 3 years at Washington State were Wooden's last 3 years that he coached.
Yeah. Okay.
and
I drove him out.
George said, here's what you do, Max. Tell him that all the money he makes will go in trust for his grandkids.
Wow.
And Max called him back and he said, George won't, this is unbelievable. He agreed to it, Well,
wonderful.
Now 3 years later, Max had this Wooden showed up every day at camp.
Okay.
I worked at his camp the first summer he had it.
All right, yeah. And
Wouldn't agreed that I could come down, even though I was at Washington State, and I worked at his camp for a month. And Wooden was there every day.
Right, Wooden was there every day. So what happens was, because Wooden didn't want Max to promote a camp that he wasn't going to be at, he confided in Max that he was going to retire at the end of 76.
Okay.
And Max goes and he tells George. Nobody knew it. And George breaks the news in his column.
Is that right?
And he
he
got reprimanded by the conference office.
Good. Hey, we got 4.5 minutes left. Mark, your mic is working now. Take about 3 minutes, and we'll go around the circle and get to our life lessons we learned from George. Mark, take it away.
I got to listen to everybody, but I just want to throw in my 2 cents about George. He gave me my first break in coaching. I was stranded in Pullman, Washington. Like you mentioned earlier, I was drug out there. And that started it. And just like anyone who has a mentor, he taught us an awful lot. John and I went through a lot that first year, and then Jack joined us the second year. And all of us were learning, not just about basketball, but how to handle kids, how to recruit. And, it was something to help form us. And as far as I was concerned, he gave me the impetus of what I wanted to do in coaching, the direction I wanted to go, the type of people I wanted to work with, how to recruit. And John mentioned how hard, and Jack mentioned how hard he worked.
Yeah.
I mean, he'd be in there at 5:30 in the morning.
Wow.
And his philosophy was to outwork anyone.
Yes, that's amazing.
So, I owe mine I owe everything I've done was kick-started by George Raveling.
Yeah.
Mark won't tell you that he won a national championship and went to 3 Final Fours.
I was going to say he done good. Mark has done very good. So that's great. That's great. Well, hey, man, this has been fantastic. I'm going to start off with my life lesson I learned from George. If it's to be, it's up to me. I have never forgotten that lesson. And I took it with me every step of the way through everything I've ever done. And, I've never been a victim. I've never been able to be stopped by adversity. Just keep on going and you can achieve your goals. Jack, what do you got to take away with a life lesson?
Well, you want to know something about if it's to be, it's up to me? That was the title of his speech he gave to camp on Friday. Wow. And there was a guy a coach with a microphone saying, I want to tape. And then the next session, there were like 30 of those. George ended up getting it taped, putting it on cassette, and selling them. And I think you still buy it to this day.
Amazing.
That's another of his money-making schemes.
He's great.
He was the best.
He was great at that. John, what do you got? A life lesson from George.
Well, first thing I want to say is that we had a great staff, and unfortunately, Steve Cottrell, who was the assistant with me out there, he was hired from Old Dominion, was really a nice person. He had a great family, beautiful family, and I think maybe it's been about 20 years since he passed away. But Mark was a grad assistant, Dick DeVinzio, then Jack joined us, and it was really a family. And I would tell you that George always sort of created that family. He took care of us, and that was the one thing. And it was tough. Pullman, Washington, you talk about a place when you're in the Pac-8 to compete. It was very difficult. So my lesson from George was, and then I went to work for Xerox for 25 years in management and senior management, and he taught me hard work and communication. Those are the 2 things that I learned from George.
There we go. And Mark, wrap it up with what's your life lesson from George Raveling?
My life lesson was that you have to believe what you're doing and keep your focus on the target. Whatever it is you want to do, you go after it. And you
Mm.
don't let anybody tell you can't accomplish it.
That's right.
And the
That's
next
right.
thing you know, your team or the people around you, your support, they're going to believe it too.
Yeah.
That's the way you
wonderful.
get ahead in life.
That's fantastic. Wow. Hey guys, this has been great. I knew the time would go by so fast. We got so much that we can say. Maybe we'll do part 2 and get Brad Jackson on there too. I don't know what happened to Brad, but he couldn't get his mic or his camera working. But hey, the George Ravelings come along very, very few times in our lives. And to be able to be associated with them, to befriend him. I saw him last year at his home in Los Angeles. You talk about a lifelong learner, Jack. I was watching his big screen with him. He had 12 different channels going on his big screen. I mean, he's taking all these little screens within the screen. He's watching all of them, and I'm like, man,
that doesn't surprise any of us.
That's right. And his library, he walked me through his library. He had books stacked to the ceiling, thousands of books from floor to ceiling. That's George Raveling.
James, he found he sort of refound the Martin Luther King speech in a book when we were at Washington State. And
Yes.
I remember him, he sort of forgot that he had it.
Yeah. He told me all about that. But hey, we got to go. They're going to pull the plug on us. Thank you so much. Let's do it again soon. Let's stay in touch. And all the best. And thank you so much for.
Sorry, Brad, if you couldn't get on.
All right. Get Brad on next
time. To you guys. John, it's good seeing you again.
Nice seeing you, Jack. Thank you, James.
Be good. Thanks now. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye now. Yes, thanks.